Welcome to Root Cause. I'm Nuna. This is where we get to the root cause of things. Architectural decisions that aged badly, leadership transitions nobody prepares you for, or the hype cycles that keep repeating themselves. If you have ever thought, am I crazy for questioning this? You're in the right place. Today, I want to root cause something that for once isn't broken. How you build a healthy team. What a healthy team actually is, we will have to figure out together. And I've got the right person for it. My guest treats organizations like distributed systems, which means the root cause of a broken team is usually a design problem, not a people problem. And right now, AI is stressing that on every corner. My guest today is Eric Lubow. Eric is a technology leader who has spent more than 20 years building and, in his own words, repairing teams and platforms, in startups, in scale-ups, and in messy legacy environments. A detail I like because it tells you how he thinks. He didn't start as a leader. He started by his own description as a mediocre developer who realized he likes setting the system up more than actually writing the code. He co-founded SimpleReach and scaled it to process billions of social media events before exiting in 2019. He's a published author, and he has spent 3 years at Thrasio as VP of Engineering, integrating over 75 acquisitions into one technology architecture. Today, he's Chief Product and Technology Officer at Mapp. And he doesn't only carry a software organization perspective. He's a military combat veteran, so he has led platoons before he has led engineering teams. He's also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, and he hosts his own podcasts. Beyond the Belt, where he interviews fellow black belts about the lives and passions they pursue off the mat. Here's why Eric is on this show. He's been writing a series of essays this year that I keep coming back to, about heroes, about shadow IT, and they are not abstract leadership content. They read like incident reviews for human systems. And this is exactly the conversation I want to have. And to be honest, my stake in this is the following. I've built and rebuilt systems from scratch, and I'm still not sure if I'm good at it. Especially when you are a first-time manager or a first-time leader, it's very hard to understand how to do it right. What I want you to get out of this is that there's no one right way. And yeah, I want Eric to share all his tips and secrets today. Thank you, Eric, for being here, and I'm glad we made this work.
Me too. Wow, listening to my resume feels like it's somebody else. Shit.
Yeah, whenever I feel down, I just reread my resume, and I'm like, oh no, I'm awesome.
It sometimes doesn't feel like I've done all those things. I know I have, but I have the scars from them, but it's interesting when you hear somebody else say it rather than thinking about it through your own lens.
When we had the first call, you also mentioned some things that you do besides all of this. Care to elaborate?
I talk a lot. I forgot what I said.
I don't know. I think you said you have two more. Maybe you meant your coaching.
Oh, yeah. I teach Jiu-Jitsu in the mornings, a couple mornings a week before I actually start my work day. I also do executive coaching. So I have a couple of C-level folks that I do executive coaching for. And I also somewhere in there try to have a life and friends and practice language learning and have my own personal projects. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I do a lot of stuff.
One thing that I want to ask about doing a lot of stuff, and I keep thinking about it as I age or enter midlife crisis. In your life, you have now accumulated a certain knowledge and you are good at certain things. Do you more enjoy doing new things that make you learn something new, or do you enjoy leaning into the existing experience and just having a bit of free space to say, okay, I spent 10 years learning X, now I can enjoy the outcome by just applying it?
I think it's a very healthy mix, especially for me. Like I am terrible at learning languages, but I still practice pretty much every day. It's not something I'm good at. It's not something that comes naturally, but You chip away at a problem, you find a way that it sits for you, at least for me. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I will never be good at languages compared to what I've seen people who are elegant in multiple languages, where I am awkward in every one of the languages I speak. But it's a mix because I'm also like good at jujitsu. I'm not great at it, but I'm good. And I enjoy learning new things, even within sometimes I enjoy going deeper and focusing on something that I know well and want to understand better. Sometimes I want to go wider, learn something completely new. And I'm happy to explore. And I don't really have an ego about being bad. I don't really care that I'm bad. I don't care when I make like egregious mistakes that make me look stupid. Like I've accomplished what I've accomplished and I'm okay with where I'm at. And the same actually applies with professional stuff too. Like I don't ever claim to be perfect, but I've made thousands of mistakes and that's helped me pattern recognize. And that doesn't mean I don't go and learn new things. AI is brand new to almost all of us. And yet I still sat there and learned like a beginner and until I got to be bare minimum mediocre at that as well. And was able to like pattern recognize when other people struggle, where they struggle, how I did it, what might work for them, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a mix of like liking to do new things and, fighting with the things that I want, that I'm okay at and want to be better at.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to hear this. I'm so tired of trying to bucket people into one specific way of thinking or one specific way of doing things. It's either you are T-shaped or M-shaped or whatever shaped. Whereas in reality, we are all messy human beings with different kinds of wants and different ways to accomplish things.
I think I agree, but I think it's also healthy to have like a limited ego or an ego in the right way, because I know that I'm not good at languages, but that doesn't stop me from trying. That doesn't stop me from being embarrassed. And it doesn't stop me from saying things where I make horrible mistakes sometimes where, in German, hässlich and hübsch are very close to each other to an English speaker. And if you mess that up, you go from calling someone pretty to calling someone ugly, and you make a mistake and you kind of laugh it off and you remember like, okay, I probably won't make that mistake again, and use that as a learning experience. So I try to just take all of those as I can and go with it.
Do you think your practice in Jiu-Jitsu or your learning languages and your skills as a leader, as a manager, they help each other, they complement each other? Do you learn something from that?
No question about it. One of the things that there are many, many things I find very beautiful about jiu-jitsu, but one of my favorite things is that no matter how good you think you are, you will get humbled. And it's just a gentle reminder that like you can be bigger, smarter, more skilled, and all you need is a little bit of an off day, and somebody who's not as skilled, not as big, not as talented will make you look stupid. And like that is a very good straight line to a healthy ego, to just be reminded that like you might think you're the best in that moment, and that helps to build confidence, but you're not always as good as you think you are. And those gentle reminders of like, hey, you still have something to learn, transfers to other portions of your life. And like it certainly does for me. Another thing that I particularly like about jiu-jitsu that I take off the mat is that jiu-jitsu, things have to work. Like somebody can teach you a move and it could look flashy. And if it doesn't work when you're actually trying to do it, then either you're not good at it, it's not the move for you, or it doesn't really actually work. And so you have to test things. You have to make sure that they work. And you as somebody who's read a lot of what I've written, you can see that I've tested a lot of things, and I will try something and I'm like, oh, that doesn't work, or that fails in this way. Okay, I can't do that. This other thing will probably fail in the same way, so I probably shouldn't do that. And you can kind of like see that arc of testing and failure and learning throughout almost everything that I do. And much of that comes from martial arts, at least for me, and 40 plus years of it.
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. I thought you learn a move and that's it. But yeah, actually, you need to, how they say it? You need to put it through yourself.
Yeah.
And put it on practice to do it. Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe another thing in sports is this every day a little bit, and then it adds up into something. And you don't even feel, if you enjoy the activity. I think everyone needs to find their sport activity. It can be martial arts, it can be yoga, it can be whatever. Yep. But once you enjoy it, you don't even notice how things accumulate. And yeah,
I think just like with anything else in life, there has to be a good balance, right? Like if you enjoy it, you will enjoy it more if you're good at it. And like you have to kind of nitpick as like, oh, I want to get my, if you're doing yoga, I want to get the angle better. I want to get the stretch deeper. I want to be able to hold this pose longer and breathe correctly. Like there's all these nuances that you can fix and improve. And learning becomes far easier when you're motivated the right way and enjoy the journey. And I learned that deeply with martial arts. And I try to impart that to all other aspects of my life, especially in the professional sphere, because I am very aware that some people show up to work because it's a paycheck and not because they love doing it. I'm very fortunate in that I love most of the things that I get to do, which means that I enjoy learning. I enjoy sometimes making those mistakes. I enjoy cleaning them up and fixing and learning and helping other people to not make those, because that's motivational for me and enjoyable for me, which is for me a clear lesson that I took off the mat.
Yeah, I think one thing that also people need to hear is, I don't think there exists a job where you enjoy every single factor of it. You will always have things that are boring, routine, people who frustrate you, whatever, in anything you do. But if you enjoy most of it, or if you have a clear goal and you want to reach it, you can ignore all the rest. You have the motivation to ignore all the rest.
It's not even ignore. By the way, I agree with you, but I don't even look at it as ignoring. I often look at it as maintenance tasks. So, very few people are like, man, I love brushing my teeth. I know this is like the Rick and Morty thing, but like very few people are like, I love brushing my teeth, but they do it because it's maintenance and you have to do it. And so there's some people who are managers and they're like, man, I hate doing one-on-ones. Yeah, but that's not for you as the manager. That's for your people to hear where you're at, hear where they're at in your eyes, hear where your head is at in terms of the team, their peers, etc. That's maintenance work. Like some of the things that you or anyone hates doing can often be viewed as maintenance work. And you don't do it because you love it. You do it because it helps you improve, helps the team improve, solidifies things, strengthens foundations. Like that's the way I often view things I don't like to do.
Let's talk about teams, and let's talk about organizations as distributed systems. Is that sort of Conway's law the other way around, that not the infrastructure repeats the team structure, but the team structure repeats your infrastructure? And what does it mean on practice? Like, does it mean we build redundancy? Does it mean you have to think about vertical versus horizontal scaling in terms of, I don't know, upskilling your existing people or adding new ones? What does it mean?
I think there's a level of nuance here that is quite difficult to get through. That piece that I wrote on infrastructure, people as infrastructure or infrastructure as people, however you view it. I just set out to put my thoughts on paper thinking it was going to be like 1,500 words. And I wrote like 7,000 words and I had to cut it down to whatever it was, 3,500, 4,000, because it was like such a dense set of ideas. And that 7,000 word first draft, I felt like I left out a lot too. Because each thing you can start at the high level and each level down you go, there's like depth to that, because I really tried to employ the systems knowledge that approached the similarity of the human like interaction. But to specifically answer your question, I don't think I learned about Conway's law until afterwards. So I didn't intentionally like mimic them, but I do think that if something shares a structure, the way Conway's law sort of asserts like infrastructure, teams follow infrastructure, the inverse is true. Like it just matters how the leaders think, how they're taught to think, and what biases and baggage they bring into the culture. Oftentimes, culture is what you do repeatedly and what people do when they're not watched, right? It's a sort of similar definition of integrity. But the reason I like that is because when you imbue people, when you tell people like, here's what I expect, then they can be the judge of whether they're doing that or not when no one's looking, and they can ask for help. You can say, hey, you're not doing this thing. Here's why I think you're not doing this thing. And they can say, I was doing it. Here's why I think I was doing it. And that's the communication that helps them to meet in the middle. That kind of thing is, does infrastructure make people? Does people make infrastructure? It kind of, at some point meets in the middle. I can like dance around a lot of this. Is there something that you specifically are curious about or you want to hear me dive into?
I want to hear you dive into with some practical examples, like you had with just now with the setting goals and the fact that you then have to let people evaluate their own path to it and probably not get into it that often.
Okay. So this is for me, this is one of the more interesting transitions I had to make as a manager, because oftentimes individual contributors hit a certain level and then they become managers, and that's a completely different job. And so they think, I certainly was guilty of this myself, is like, I know how to do this. I know how I would do this. And if this person's not doing it like that, they're not doing it the best way. That is a control problem, because as an individual contributor, your job is to have as much control to some extent over the outcome. And when you have control over that outcome, then you're the responsible party when it goes right or when it goes wrong. But when you become a manager, you have to cede control. You have to go hands off a little bit, and you have to shift towards being outcome oriented. Like, where are the outcomes that I want you to reach? And then you have to guide people to getting to those outcomes. Or you let them, depending on their seniority level, you let them get there themselves, and then you retro it with them. Like, hey, what went well? What could be improved? And let's talk about it. Like, what decision did you make? What thinking did you apply here? Like the outcome oriented approach is how people find their own way.
Yeah, well, this is exactly what I often have problem with, and we discussed this with Adrian in one of the episodes, and he also mentioned that it's an ego thing and it's a control thing a lot of times. But here's what I am feeling a lot of times is the reverse of it, because if I ask someone to build a system X, for example, or a module or a function, doesn't matter, and I cannot know every single detail about how to get there or even how the end result will look like. And my question is, how can I ask somebody do something that I myself am not sure how it will look like? It feels like I am putting too much responsibility on that person. I'm like, I have to know this really, really, really well before I can give it to another person. But the moment I know it really, really well, it's usually I'm done with the job already. I've gone through all the steps and there's a result. So yeah, this is my struggle with delegation.
So that logic doesn't apply beyond a certain level. Like, there is no way as a CTO I can be anywhere near as good at design, for example, as a designer. So I can't know that end to end. And maybe because I grew up in DevOps, I can know DevOps really well. But even that is hard when, like the amount of change that happens on a weekly, monthly basis. So I can't actually know it that well. That I can know it well enough. Logic works at the manager level, at the director level, maybe, but beyond that, now you have different disciplines underneath you, and you can't effectively know it that well, which means people have to drive towards outcomes, which is, what does success look like? Like, if this project was done successfully, here's what the outcome would be. And you might say that, And then the person starts it and they're like, whoa, boss, something's not right here. I don't know how I would possibly get to that. And then you have to sit and rethink those assumptions with them. You might be wrong. The goal is that you get a better feel for what the right outcome is. The more experience that you have, the more projects you do, the more building you do. And then you start working to hand those things off. You at some point have to cede control. There's this really problematic transition for managers. For me, it took me probably 12 to 18 months where I thought that getting something done and like being able to check something off meant I did it. And I would feel like I didn't get anything done if all I did was guide people. And I had to change what, like to use the engineering parlance, I needed to change my definition of done, of a task, of a day, of my job to feel like I did something well enough to be like, oh, today was a good day. Today was a positive day. And that was a very long transition because no one told me. I mean, I probably could have read it, but I didn't. I never came across that fact. Nobody said like, hey, you're done, you're good is somebody else being effective, not you having built that thing.
Actually, it takes a lot of more mindful and intentional approach to guide people and to solve the difficult parts and to also be present for other people. Like you need to be in a healthy state of mind for that. And if you code at 2 a.m. In the night, you can't be in a healthy state of mind next day for people to approach you.
Maintenance. Sleep is maintenance.
True. What I also have noticed, and I've said this before, is the disciplines I'm not good at, which is also front end and UI and design work. Those are the most successful delegation paths for me because I don't know how to do this thing. So I have to trust the person. So I understand that the hardship is to let go also of the parts that you know, or you have built your own gut feeling of.
There's a great essay, and I'm going to mess up the name of it, but it's called like Giving Away Your Legos. It was written by the guys at First Mark, I believe. That essay, I think, teaches people a lot about how to become a manager, not the first line manager, but how to be part of a scale up where things are changing so fast and you're getting more responsibilities and things you've never thought about or looked at. And all of a sudden you have to give that away and somebody reports to you and you have to decide what good is for something you've never thought about. And it really just talks about ways that you can give those away and still feel good about yourself. I definitely learned quite a bit from that essay when it was first written. And I still like ask people to read that. I still have, new managers read that essay. Not because everything in it is something I agree with 100%, but because it's information that you can add to your toolbox about being a manager, being a leader, about delegation, and knowing that it's okay to give things up and learn where that push-pull is of good management and good delegation.
Do you think you can graduate and be a manager, or you have to go through developer, architect, DevOps, some sort of hands-on path? Can you just learn being a manager without any practical?
Absolutely. It's a skill. It's a skill just like anything else. I think that one of the reasons that people sometimes struggle to be a manager is because they often don't make that transition from doing to managing, like doing to leading. And you have to be more of a communicator. And most people are not taught to effectively communicate. That's, active listening. That's having empathy. That's validating emotions. That's, building relationships. Those things are all skills. And I, for sure, was awful at those things at the early part of my management career. I got away with it as a leader in the military because I cared about people. And so I had empathy, but I didn't know how to listen in a good way. I didn't know how to reflect back. I didn't know how to use phrases like, hey, let me repeat that back to you in my own words to make sure I understand what you're saying to me. Like these kinds of skills absolutely can be taught, but you have to know that you're lacking them, or you have to have somebody say, listen, we need to work on your ability to listen or to communicate. And people have to be willing to be open to learning those skills. And that's a hit on your ego because everyone thinks they can listen. Everyone thinks they can communicate. And there are levels to this thing. And if you can do it well, great. But there's probably room for improvement.
You also have mentioned that a lot of people become the managers they don't want to be. Like they become the opposite of their bad manager, and how that is probably not that healthy. I think it's somewhat similar to not passing along the generational trauma. Like
That's
you
exactly what it is.
either you are the opposite of your parents, let's say, and you go too far into the extreme, or you are just repeating the same thing. So what would be the more healthy way to become a manager if you have a very vivid example of bad manager in your head?
I actually don't think it's a bad thing to become the opposite of the manager you didn't like. I think that's a very superficial way of phrasing it. And I'm not like throwing stones at you. I have phrased it like that too. But I think it's okay to do that if you know what you didn't like, you know what you're fixing, and you then continue to progress in the direction you want to go intentionally, not just running opposite of what you don't want to be. Like I think it's a good starting point to say, I don't want to be like that, so I'm going to go in this direction. But that self-evaluation and self-reflection, I think, are incredibly important in order to facilitate not just good behavior, but intentional behavior in what you want to see as a manager.
Maybe
the other
not
part of that,
overdoing it is what I meant. So like you can go the opposite direction. It's just that you need to not overdo it.
Yeah. One of the quotes that I keep in mind is everything in moderation, including moderation, right? Sometimes you need to go way overboard, and then you were like, okay, I've gone way overboard. I'm way in the opposite direction of this. Cool. Now let me stop, reassess. Should I keep going in this direction, or should I work on something else?
One more thing that I thought is that exactly people like you who are good at delegating and managing and leadership, they might even have easier time with AI and AI agents because they have learned delegation, and it's all about also putting aside your developer ego sometimes and not writing that function yourself, but delegating it and building the infrastructure around these agents to make them effective.
You know, this is funny because as soon as AI agents started becoming popular, everyone started coming up with these governance frameworks, and you have to do this and give these things guardrails. And I think very early on, the first time I did agentic programming, I was like, oh, this is just like leading a person, telling them what you want them to do, giving them boundaries, giving them enough context, not trying to control them, and then letting them go off and do things. And so I started talking to the agents the exact way that I would talk to a person that I was assigning a task. And I would even phrase it, and I still do to this day, where I say, hey, if you have any questions or you need any clarifications, come back to me. And if you're unsure if something warrants more clarity, then just ask. And even that has given me really good interactions with agentic programming. And then even when I go for multi-agent programming, it's the same thing. I give the same kind of guidance, and I say, look, if you're going to offload this to another agent, here's the boundaries that I would like you to set. And if you're unsure, I would prefer that you just come back to me. People, in my experience, try to write these very hardline things for their agents, like do not ever do that. Even when you ask Claude or ChatGPT to write a prompt for you, it gives a very hard line. Do not do this, only do that. And the problem for me is that all of these agents have been trained on the sum total of human knowledge. And that means that if it's representing a human, it's representing consciousness in whatever way that it understands it to be. And therefore, it's also representing communication. And so if you would talk to another human like that and get an effective response, by all means, go for it. But nobody really wants to be talked to like that. So I try to talk to the agents often in the way I would talk to other humans. And that has been incredibly useful and I think successful, because most of the software I end up building, the agents end up doing like a very good job of like coming back to me when they have a problem, or suggesting another way of doing it when it's like, hey, you started with this conclusion, and I don't think, and I given the context you had, and I added this other context, here's what I think, these kinds of things. And actually, one more example before I, I stop talking. The other thing that I've done is I often like conversations with agents in very specific ways, where I'm like, hey, do all of your research and then come back to me. And every time you have a question or a comment that you think would warrant feedback, enumerate it. So this way I can say, answer 1, this, answer 2, this, answer 3 and 4, that. This way we can create our own threads. And that is no different than you would say, have a conversation in Slack. Right? Because you can say, hey, if you want to have a conversation, if you want to break out an idea, here you break it out into a thread. So I do the same communication facilitation that I do with humans, with agents, because that works for me and ultimately ends up being reflected my communication style back to me. And the agent works in a way that facilitates both of our communications. Theirs, which is depth, if that's what's asked for, and mine, which is like segmentation.
Nobody canceled user stories. Like, we still have to define who needs to do something, what's the business background, and what do we want to achieve. I mean, it worked for years for people. Why wouldn't it work for agents who were trained by people to follow people's instructions?
Yeah.
And I wasn't planning to ask this, but since you touched on the similarities of how you talk with people versus how you talk with agents, are there situations where you prefer to talk to an agent versus talking to a person? And do you see people being replaced by agents? I mean, it's on everybody's mind. I know it sounds stupid, but
it doesn't sound
stupid. I think
stupid.
it needs to be addressed.
It doesn't sound stupid. I think that the problem is that the amount of media that we are all being fed is that, boards want less people costs and agents can do that. And so I think there's this like easy path that most people take. Well, if I'm being told it enough, what is it? The 1984 sort of methodology that people have, like the Aldous Huxley book, which is if you give people enough information, they won't be able to sort facts from fiction. And so if people keep hearing that agents are going to replace humans, then they're going to keep pretending like that's the case because they're not going to have the headspace to think about it. So I don't prefer, there are certain things that I prefer doing with agents. Like there's sometimes where I need a thinking partner that is more expertise than any human I have access to. Then I will go with an agent. I'm like, help me think through this. But at a certain point, I much actually prefer getting input from humans because I want humans to be able to do more. That's one of the reasons I enjoy coaching so much, is because I enjoy helping humans become better at whatever it is they do. If it's coaching executives, then I want them to be better executives. If it's coaching jiu-jitsu people, I want them to be better at martial arts. And if it's coaching the people that I work with that are that work for me or that are in my organization, I want them to be able to do their jobs more effectively. And sometimes doing your job more effectively means using the right tool in the right way. And that is often the way I look at AI. Sometimes people go right into, hey, make these 10 agents do this thing. Okay. If that's what you believe is the right way to solve this problem, maybe you're right. Maybe there's something I don't know. But also I could just ask this other person who has, a decade of experience in engineering, and say like, hey, what do you think about this? And if I want to understand this problem better before I ask the human, I might say, hey, can you give me a TLDR as a CTO AI that I want to understand how Kubernetes networking works in this way and where the pros and cons are so I can have an intelligent conversation? And just start there. And it's not so I can gotcha the other person. It's so that we can have a baseline conversation that is informed from both sides. And if one of us ends up not knowing something, then we can use that as a takeaway and go back to AI and continue to use it as a tool. I personally would not like to see AI replacing humans across the board, but I know I'm not the only thought, not the only thinker in this space.
Yeah, but as lately all of those people who were saying that everybody will be replaced with AI agents. They're starting to take it back a bit, to dial it down and say that no, actually humans are needed, and somebody would like you would first use a tool and then find a person, teach that person how to use that tool so that you don't have to do that and that person can do it. It's just the same here.
Yeah. I like to think of AI as a force multiplier, right? Like if one person, like for as long as we were doing stuff, one person could do one person's job. And if now you can have one person do 1.8 person job, and I still have the same budget to pay the same number of people, and I can get, 1.8 times the output from them, that's wonderful. That's a force multiplier. But I am not personally looking to replace people with AI. I know that is not the universal sentiment amongst technologists, but
this is exactly what I want people to hear. So
yeah, I think that, and I ensure, at least in my organization, that we spend time to teach people how to use these tools. That doesn't remove the fear. Like everyone hears the same media. Everyone hears where everyone's going to be replaced by AI. So it doesn't remove the fear. But if you can get people to use the tool, to have fun using it, to feel motivated to use it, to be more effective while they use it and feel better about their job, and maybe give themselves more time back in the day and hopefully a little bit more headspace, that's a win.
What you as a team lead, as a manager, what would you call a healthy team?
That's going to vary so greatly between managers and between people. I would say that a healthy team is a team that has, first and foremost, psychological safety to call out what's working and what's not working. They are a team that is productive. They are a team that can work together and take initiative and fix problems. Those things don't always happen at the same level for the same problem, for the same day, on the same day. Like people have their good days and their bad days, but there's give and take, and there's like the ability to operate in a unified way. I know that's a vague answer, but there are some teams that work incredibly effectively that don't communicate that well. They're just a bunch of individuals, and the manager is like facilitates the lone wolf mindset in all of the people on the team. And that can be a healthy team. I personally would not want to work on a team like that, but that doesn't mean that those teams aren't also potentially healthy. They're healthy because that's authentically who the manager are and who the team's members are and how they function together. But a healthy team that you would lead, versus a healthy team that I would lead, those teams are going to look very different. Like some people like more diversity of ideas and some people like less.
Yeah. It would be like similar to defining what is a healthy relationship that's just individual to everyone. Of course, there are obvious red flags, just like in a team setting, there would be red flags, as you said, psychological safety. Maybe also ability to absorb new tools, new technologies like AI in a more calm and successful way. That could be also a criteria for a healthy team.
I don't know about that. You can have teams that their job, like COBOL is still being used in many banks and airlines around the world. They can AI, I'm sure, can write good COBOL, but most people are going to still have to check every line of that because there's not as much COBOL out there. And so you don't necessarily need people who are going to adopt those new things to be successful in that team. That the need for adopting new tools and continuous learning is something that you consider to be a healthy trait. I do as well, but it doesn't mean that everybody does. There are good reasons for people to be quote unquote laggards in the adoption curve. Those people who are laggards, those people prefer stability. They prefer consistency. And just because your desire for, or your ambition for the team is that they learn new stuff and drive the team forward, doesn't mean that person who desires stability is wrong. It means that their preference is like, hey, I like what I'm doing. I'm good at what I'm doing. And there are companies and teams that need those kinds of people. Those are just different types of adoption curve people on your team. There's nothing wrong with that.
As a consequence, do you think the team mimics not only the infrastructure, but it also mimics its leader? So as you said, I'm curious about new technologies. I think it's important. As a consequence, I will give this to my team. So in a way, the team also maps to your or my personal preferences and thoughts and the ways of thinking.
I think the team mimics leaders. They don't just mimic the manager. If your manager is inspirational, is charismatic, is somebody who is deserving of merit, and people respect that person and want to be more like that person, then absolutely. But sometimes that's not the team lead. That might be a team member who is that like charismatic or respect earning person. And your job as the manager is to figure out who that person is. And if that's you, great. Then eyes on you as the role model, but sometimes it's not you, and that's okay. If your ego can handle that. If your ego can't handle that, then you've got other issues. But if your ego can handle that, then you should be supporting and propping up that person and knowing that everyone's going to follow that person. And you should be guiding the team in the way that you would like to see that the team work, and facilitating that person's influence on the team. So I don't think it's always people follow the manager. It is that people follow leaders. And if you are that leader, cool, but it's not always you. But it also could be you and someone else, or multiple people.
And in one of the posts, you also mentioned things like facilitating or encouraging sharing and encouraging. You wrote about these channels where you write, for example, in a Slack channel, what did you build to avoid also shadow IT and maybe shadow AI. Maybe you can briefly repeat that from your post, and then help me understand how to avoid making that theatrics, because sometimes it could be that some people on your team are genuinely that kind of people who like sharing, who are more of a, hey team, let's do X and Y together. And there are other types of people who would just look at it and say, yeah, that's a poser. They're just, aiming for the manager's like, I'm not going to do that. How do you navigate that?
So to start, I like to engender a culture of sharing. Like, I want people to be as open and transparent as possible. And that's also the kind of person that I am professionally, is to share as much as is possible and give people as much context and information and let them work through it at their pace. So we have a couple of Slack channels that we use for very public sharing. One of them is the releases channel, which we just say, hey, if you build something, whether it's on the roadmap, off the roadmap for yourself, share it. If it's on company property, share it. Like, we want to know, we want people to feel inspired. We want people to feel motivated. And you more than likely, if you're solving a problem, it's probably not just you who has the problem at work. There's almost certainly someone else. So, you can get someone else testing your tool. It can save other people hours in a day or weeks. And this is the kind of sharing that I want to make sure happens. Is like, there will always be people who are trying to get the eye of the manager of leadership. And I think, I forget who said it, maybe like the pragmatic engineer, Girdley, he said something along the lines of like promotion driven development. And I feel like that's always a possibility. But that's only if, that's an enterprise problem. That's larger companies where, promotions need to be seen. things need to be seen in order for people to get promoted. I personally think that cheerleaders are okay. Like there is a reason sometimes to be like, hey, that's really cool. I'm glad you did that. And if somebody is overly cheerleadery or overly, motivational, whatever, it's also okay to like go in the background and say, hey, look, I'm really glad you're doing this, but can you just dial it down a little bit? We want to make sure that other people don't feel stifled, and it's like learning how to deliver the information as a leader, as a manager in a way that facilitates people's good behavior without tamping down on enthusiasm. And that's a hard line to walk, because you will at some point for sure crush someone's enthusiasm accidentally and feel awful about it, maybe for the rest of your life. But you will learn that lesson. So all of this public sharing thing is really important to get right.
I didn't think you will aim for the cheerleader. I thought you would aim for the person who calls out the cheerleader, because for me it feels like the cheerleaders are the ones who are more for sharing, and then there are people who don't like that, and they will intentionally stay silent and say, well, that's just...
Let me give you an example of where cheerleaders, not that they're a problem, but that they can accidentally cause problems. If you have a very, very forward-thinking engineer who's really into AI, really deeply like passionate about it, and they're just constantly posting article after article, that is going to, even though it's motivational and they're doing it purely out of enthusiasm and excitement, people who are not as forward-thinking about it, they're going to be like, well, I don't want to participate in this conversation. Like, I found something interesting, but they're like 20 steps ahead of me. And so their enthusiasm sets the tone that's so far ahead that maybe not everybody can be willing to participate. And so you need to say, like, look, I'm glad you're doing this. Share those with me, or share those with in this other group first. And let's leave the more public group for people who are trying to catch up, or let's try to engage people more, like with the enthusiasm, like this is like a road to hell is paved with good intentions kind of a problem, right? That person's excited, they're motivated, they're doing all the sharing that you want, but they're also accidentally hurting other people's enthusiasm and motivation because they're so far ahead. And it's making people feel bad. And this is part of what running an organization is like, like you still have to take care of people on both sides of the adoption curve.
I think one more article that has sort of hit a nerve for me, this was about heroics. And to briefly say, heroes are the people who, I don't know, fix something in the middle of the night or on a weekend, and that can as well bring X to unintentional damage, as you put in your article. So my question is, what am I supposed to do? Because have been oftentimes this hero person who takes too much responsibility, who fixes things. Of course, I understand that this fix needs to be followed up with a proper fix, for example, but what are these people supposed to do? Not fix it or not care too much?
Let's separate the problem into two separate things. First of all, there will always be issues in production. That's just the nature of it. And sometimes you want that person to go in and fix it. Sometimes you're that person. You go in and you fix it. But if that becomes what everybody relies on, that's where you've got the problem. And especially if everybody includes you. Right? If you're like, well, I'll just fix this in production when it breaks. Now what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for burnout, basically. You're like, this is going to have to be me until the end of time. So yes, you need to solve the problem, and then you need to solve the other problem, which is what led to this being you either being the only person that can do this or the only person who is willing to do it. Right? So that means you maybe didn't do knowledge sharing. That means that maybe you didn't put the right documentation in place. That means the alerting system may only go to you instead of to a group. It means that you may not have not just done the knowledge sharing, but the teaching to make the knowledge sharing useful, right? If you're the only person who knows how to restart a service because you have to take 20 steps, yes, you need to document that, but then you need to explain why you got there and have other people work on it so that knowledge is shared. Therefore, ownership can be shared. Like there's a lot of problems that led up to this production problem. And yes, you need to fix it, but then you need to fix all the subordinating problems that led you there. And most people just go right back to developing, which is what you often do because there's customer requirements. You need to get the next feature out. Sales has, but if you don't do all of this maintenance work, all of this teaching, all of this training, then you're going to be right back expecting heroics and having a heroics expected of you, even if that's by yourself.
Yeah, I think I'm more comfortable solo exactly for this reason. It's hard to put brakes on yourself sometimes, and it's easier to create yet another automation script instead of explaining 20 steps. But I do acknowledge that that's healthier for everybody, for our organization, for the team, for yourself as an individual.
But you have to trust that other people can do this work, and you're not going to build that trust just by like handing it off. You have to make sure that these people that you're working with know that you have their best intention, that their intentions will lead somewhere, that if you ask them to do this work or learn this information, that you will then trust them, and that there will be fewer of these heroics where you're like, get out of my way, let me do it. That you will sit next to them and say, okay, let's work through this together. Yes, there's an outage, but this is a minor one. So like we can allow this while we work through this problem together, right? And then you can put a boundary on it. Like, hey, we will spend 10 minutes. And if it's not making progress, then I will go do this. And then we'll sit down and figure out how we can make this facilitate you doing this next time.
Is it the so-called heroes' responsibility to recognize this and address this, or is it yours as a manager?
Sometimes the hero is the manager. Right. Because that oftentimes,
yes.
Yeah, as senior leaders, you've been through the shit. And now that you've been through it, you know what it looks like and how to fix it. So you become that hero. But I think it's incumbent upon leadership to recognize that there are these problems, and silent heroes end up being silent burnouts. And then they go off into the sunset, right? Like they get tired, they quit, they go find another job. It is your job as a leader and as a manager to recognize if you're doing it, especially if there's no one above you. If you're the CTO and you're pulling this crap, then yes, the CEO could recognize it. But in reality, you have to say, why does this keep being me? What am I not doing right that I am the person constantly doing this? But if it's your people, you have to, got to do that retro and say, why were you the only person who was able to fix this? Do you not recognize these things in yourself sometimes? When you're fixing this, do you ever stop and think like, hey, is this me?
I am that, for sure. I am the person who's constantly burning out and doing too much. And it is a constant struggle to limit. I wish we as humans would have these indicators like in video games. Like, this is your health indicator, this is your hunger indicator, and it will show me exactly when it's on yellow or on red, and I would address it. But as in reality, you don't see that very often. And especially when your wants and desires and are ahead of your capabilities, maybe, or of just hours in the day, you end up burning out. And it is a path for me, a path through mindfulness, through limiting, through pulling the brakes, through trusting people to navigate this.
Yeah, it's hard. And sometimes you just need to stop and ask yourself, like, what did I, am I, to use your example, am I having this defensive reaction just because I'm hungry or because I'm tired? Like, am I annoyed at this person not figuring this out because I didn't teach them or because they're really the problem? Right? Like, these are hard questions to ask because they also chip away at our insecurities. And that is like, when it comes to machines, to think of the humans as distributed systems, it's easy to abstract away the humanity of it and say, well, where's the, pressure release valve, or where's the, where can this team absorb more? But those are humans doing that. And so you also have to check in with them and yourself and say, can you actually absorb more? And what thing falls on the floor if you do? Is it your health? Is it your mental health? Is it this production system that you can no longer maintain because there's not enough hours in the day? This is the trade-off part of it.
Yeah, I agree. I really wanted to talk with you about hiring as well. One thing that I often hear and notice is that people talk about hiring like it's done in a vacuum. You go and hire a person, whereas in reality, you hire a person into a team more often than hire solo. And one of my friends, I was struggling with hiring as a first-time manager back years ago. And my friend told me that I need to treat it again like dating. This person might not be perfect on paper, but you need to examine your team, understand what would fit into that team. What does that team need? Maybe right now they need just a very fun person. I'm not saying to ignore all the technical skills, but what do you think about hiring into a team? What is more important, the outcome, the team health? How do you navigate this?
There's no universally more important thing. One of the things that I've done over the years is when somebody wants to hire for a role, I ask them to write the job description. This is like pretty common, but the way I often like to do job descriptions is, if you had worked here in the last 30 days, what would you have worked on? So what skills would you have needed? And in the next 30 days, what do you think this person would work on? Right? Like, that's the starting point. That's how we get skills and actual stuff, not just this person has a bachelor's degree and 5 years of writing Python, or like, yes, fine. But like, you would have needed some level of skill to do all of these tasks. And if you can talk about these tasks, like, you don't have to know how to do it necessarily because they're endemic to the system that's being worked on, but you will have thought about some element of this. Is like, oh, this is a distributed systems task, so I would have to understand how to work with, I don't know, Zookeeper, or maybe I need to understand Paxos or something, where you can be like, oh, this person's thought about these problems, and not, has this person been writing Java for 10 years? You know what I mean? Like, that's the starting point. And because to me, that's a clearer, what would this person just have done, and what would this person have to do? The next part of that is, what's the team vibe? Right? Do you have a bunch of like super outgoing people who's got a very communicative, like busy Slack channel where they're throwing memes all day? Or is this just a bunch of people who, they show up, they talk very little, they're introverts, they do their job, and there's nothing wrong with either one of those things. But knowing the culture of the team, if you stick a really strong introvert into a very extroverted team, they're all going to probably be uncomfortable to some extent, because it's like, it's hard for both groups to adapt. And so knowing the culture of your team is really helpful. So sometimes you have a very introverted team and you want to pull them out of their shell a little bit, and then you want someone who's slightly more extroverted. Or somebody you maybe want to slide between those worlds, and you want somebody who's a bit more of an ambivert and can be extroverted and can be introverted. And so all of these things are part of the dating hiring process. And I also always ask people to do like that airport test. Like, if you're stuck with this person in an airport for 72 hours, can you have a conversation with them? Do you want to talk to them? For as long as I've been hiring, and I've hired literal thousands of people and done thousands of interviews, especially from my scale up days. I always ask at the tail of the interview the same like 4 or 5 questions. And I don't think I ever published the piece, but I have like a piece that I've written about it, because for me, like some of those questions are, what advice would you have given yourself 5 years ago? Right. And some people will say, I would have bought Bitcoin. It's like, okay, cool. That's great.
You're the fun meme person.
Well, maybe, but also that means that this person's like most likely motivated by material things, which is not good or bad. It's information, right? Some people would say, I would have learned to become a better listener. Okay, cool. How'd you get there, right? And then I ask people what they do for fun, like, because I want to see what they look like when they're excited. Because if you do something for fun, you're going to talk about it excitedly. So I want to see that comes out of people. There's nothing wrong with people who write code for fun and write code professionally. But if that's all that you do, then most likely your versatility is going to be slightly less than people who have multiple things that they like to do. Another one of those questions is, if you could tell me anything about yourself, if you were like, man, if Eric just understood this about me, our lives would be better. Like that kind of stuff is useful. Sometimes I've gotten answers like, I am such a perfectionist. It's like, okay, cool. Now I know that I need to ask this person on a regular basis, hey, is this good enough? Have we progressed, or are we still aiming for perfection? Right? So people will sometimes helpfully tell you these things. So I've got a whole list of these, and all of these have to do with getting to know the person more than just the skill. Because if all you care about is their skill, then at some point their personality is going to become like a problem for you as a manager, because you didn't explore that and they didn't get a chance to explore that with you.
I'm really glad you're saying it, because I'm hearing these horror stories of people going through 8, 10 stage interviews with coding assessments that take days to implement, whereas I have always approached hiring as getting to know the person, getting to know their motivation. And for me, it was always important that they are curious, interested, that they want to share, want to help the team. The technical skills, yes, of course, they need to match your expectations, but I believe everyone can learn whatever they want if they put their mind to it.
Agreed?
Yeah. One thing you said, and I want to quote it back to you. So you said, anyone alone would likely to fail. And you mentioned that when a CTO is failing to recognize their heroics, for example, a CEO might help them, but you already kind of mentioned that this is a lonely job. And I want to ask you, if anyone alone would fail, as you say, how are you as a CTO who is sort of alone dealing with that? Who are your peers you can turn to? Is it your CEO? Is it your co-founder? Maybe also from your previous experiences with other companies. Who do you share this burden with, let's say?
I think there's a mix of ideas in there. First off, this is one of the reasons that executive coaches kind of exist, right? Because there is the objectivity possibility. The executive coaches usually have experience in this ways, and an executive can turn to somebody and say, hey, I'm struggling here. This is what I need help with, or I'm struggling here and I don't know what I need help with, right? So you have that kind of relationship with somebody that is external to the organization. I also have people that have been previous bosses or people that have worked for me that have climbed the ranks elsewhere, that I still have relationships. And sometimes I will just message them and be like, hey, I'm really stuck. Like, this is what I'm working with. Like, what do you think? How would you unpack this? Especially you having known me, knowing my strengths and weaknesses. So I keep that network. And also I've had a running thing that almost anybody who has worked directly for me can reach out to me at any point. And many of them have. I have very regular conversations with people who used to be engineering leads for me, DevOps leads, product managers, data scientists. Some people reach out to me on LinkedIn after like 2-3 years of like 5 years of not having talked and saying like, hey, can you give me feedback on this PRD? And I'm happy to do it. I mean, obviously it's not like I won't drop everything to do that, but like I still do that because I think those kinds of relationships are quite important, especially professionally when you have someone you trust. But to bring it back to inside of the organization, it's very difficult to have those kinds of things inside the organization once you reach a certain level because you are the accountable party. Like when something goes wrong or goes right, it's you. It's you that has to make sure that it gets fixed if it went wrong. And if it went right, that you often give credit to somebody else. And that kind of thing makes it feel lonely. Like, oh, I'm never going to get, some people who need credit, who need to feel validated and have received the gratitude and recognition. This is being a C-level, C-suite kind of person is quite difficult because you really only get the shit, right? So I try my best to hand off all of the positive because I'm not a person who needs recognition. I feel in very many ways fortunate that I don't feel the need for recognition. Because if I did, I think my job would be much more difficult. So I can easily hand off that recognition. And when something goes wrong, I can easily accept the blame because my ego doesn't survive on that validation or that recognition. But I know that that's not the norm. So to more specifically answer your question, I have other people in the organization where I'm like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Like I need some kind of support. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, or here's exactly what I need. Can you do this? If not, how can we get ourselves to this point? I know that's a bit of a vague answer in a specific way.
No, it's not. I exactly wanted to hear whether that happens inside of the organization or outside.
It's
and
both.
Maybe it's both. And the follow-up question would be, do you allow yourself to get vulnerable with your team, or does that figuring out usually happen behind the scene? Do you have this habit of, or not habit, but does it happen sometimes that you come to your team and say, look, guys, I don't know?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I would not have done that in my younger years because I thought I don't know was a sign of weakness, but it's not. I mean, it's a sign of strength. It's a sign of saying, hey, I don't know what to do with this, so let's figure this out together. We have the collective wisdom of 4, 5, 6, 7 people, experience of decades of engineering and product leadership and DevOps and data science. Like, let's figure this out together, right? Like, I don't know what I'm doing here. So if someone else can like lead this and help me go in the right direction, let's do that. Or can we brainstorm together or whatever? I am very fortunate in that I have a group of people that work for me now that accept that responsibility when I'm like, hey, I'm stuck. And they're like, okay, let's work through this. It's not an easy thing because sometimes it's like, hey, I'm the boss, I should, but that should is kind of the enemy of progress oftentimes when you're stuck. So it's easier to say, it's harder to actually do it, but the outcome's going to be better. And I'm not going to pretend like I do it all the time. Like I would love to say every time I'm stuck, I ask for help, but no, that's not always the case. Sometimes I'm like, I can power through this and figure it out. And sometimes I do, which is good for self-confidence and knowing that I can trust myself. And sometimes I'm just like, I'm not getting anywhere and I don't know what to do about this. And then I go to the team and I'm like, hey, here's what I'm stuck on. How do we handle this?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Thanks a lot for the honesty. I feel like I got a free consultation in this 1 hour. So I hope a lot of people who are first-time managers or are seasoned managers and have a different team now at their hands will get a lot of honest answers from this episode. Some final questions. I'm a big bookworm and I always ask for book recommendations. Do you have something? Can be fiction, can be nonfiction, whatever feels.
The Bobaverse series, the We Are Legion, We Are Bob is the first book, is probably one of my favorite series of all time by, I believe it's Dennis Taylor. I think there's 5 books now. It's science fiction. It's about an AI, and hands down one of my favorite series of all times. Um, what else? I don't know. I read probably 20 to 30 books a year, mostly fiction, mostly sci-fi, space operas. Becky Chambers is a brilliant author, as well. I believe my favorite book from her is either A Psalm for the Wild Built, or A Long Trip to an Angry Planet, or something along those lines, is that, which is also a 4-book series. Those would be my recommendations, but otherwise, like, people can creep on my Goodreads and see everything that I've read. That's probably the easiest way to get a book recommendation. What would you recommend?
First of all, one day when I retire, I'm gonna have a podcast about sci-fi with IT people, because I think it is so important for people to read sci-fi, and for the spirit of imaginative future in technology to stay alive. So thanks for that. I also like sci-fi a lot. What I would recommend, again, let's be friends on Goodreads. I'm always looking for people. I've shared this on LinkedIn as well. The Expansion series is something I really liked. The Expanse, sorry.
The Expanse, yeah.
The book before the one that I'm reading now, Children of Time.
I read that. Great book.
I liked it a lot. Also, there were some elements of AI and how your conscience is getting mixed with the AI and then becoming inseparable. The book I'm reading now, it's called Permutation City. It's from 1994, and when you read that, you actually can trace why the movie Matrix happened when it happened, and it's so mind-bending. So it's a hard read, but I do recommend it. I don't know, The Blind Side by Peter Watts is also a hard read, but it's all about your cognition, and if you sit through it till the end, the moment you close that book, your mind is blown, and you're with the feeling with the book for days. Yeah, I don't really like nonfiction, technical IT nonfiction, to be honest.
Same.
I have been always embarrassed of that fact, because I never read best practices. I try to figure them out myself.
There's only 2 books that I would recommend that people read for managing and leadership. There's many that you can read, but both of them are by Patrick Lencioni. One of them is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's like 250 pages. You can read it in an afternoon. It's very narrative. It reads very wonderfully. Tons and tons of incredible lessons in there. And the second one is The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. It is one of the most boring reads. It is absolutely brutal to get through, but it is one of the most dense and information-packed, like valuable information-packed reads on maintenance of healthy organizations. And I would be remiss if I didn't recommend it, but it was a difficult read.
Righty, thanks a lot. And we have this thing where every person from the previous episode leaves a question for you. And funny enough, this is a question which almost the question you ask on the interviews. And the question was from the previous thing: what is the one thing that you would tell yourself in the beginning of your journey that you know now that you didn't know back then? And you can treat it as a beginning of your leadership journey, team leading journey, or maybe journey in IT, treat it however you like.
I for sure did not spend enough time when I was younger on understanding myself through the lens of other people. And that has been hugely problematic to me in my personal life and minorly problematic in my professional life. I really wish that I had been taught emotions and emotional communication and awareness, self-awareness of emotions and emotional communication at a young age. I wish that was part of like growing up. But for me, it was not, unfortunately. And I have had to learn that the hard way through many lost relationships that I wish I did not lose.
How do you actually learn about yourself through the lens of others? Because I know how to learn about myself through reflection, which is maybe a faulty way because, again, you are on your own thinking about what you did right or wrong, and you are biased because it's you thinking about you. So how do you learn about yourself through the lens of others? Do you just ask them?
And you listen.
Okay, as simple as that.
You ask and you listen. Hey, did I understand? Here's what I thought I heard. Did I understand this correctly? Here's how I view what you said about me. Did I understand this, or am I just reacting? Am I just being defensive? It's actually sitting with what you're told and like hearing it and internalizing it. And if you don't understand it, asking and not assuming that you'll just figure it out. Through the lens, like you have to do all of that self stuff first. And then you get to a point where you now have to get other people's input.
Thanks. Your question to the next guest.
My question to the next guest. What is the most benign thing that you're proud of and you don't get to talk about?
Okay, what is it for you?
This is super benign. I helped my friends move a couple months ago. And if you're in Berlin too, so you know that like parking is a nightmare. And I was one of the people who had a license. So I was the driver of the big Miles van. And we drove, we unloaded, and then I went to go put the van back. And on the first try, I parallel parked the van with like 4 centimeters on each side. I just went one in and then perfect. And it was great. And I was so excited. And there wasn't anybody around. There wasn't anybody on the street who saw it. My friends weren't with me. And I got back and they were all exhausted from moving stuff up and down the stairs. And I came back and I was like, guys, I just parked the van. And they were like, yeah, we know. And I was like, but you don't understand. I parallel parked it. And there was like, and they just didn't have the energy because they were exhausted and they didn't see it. So they couldn't celebrate. They were just hearing it hearsay. So like that little benign moment that I managed to park that van on the first try, with so little space on each side.
I'm actually learning for my driver's license only now at 37. But so I can really share your excitement. Every successful trip on the exercise of driving, on the practical exercise, is just giving me so much energy.
Yeah, you get used to it, but then those wins.
But then something like that happens.
Yeah. And I've been driving since I was 17 years old. I mean, almost 20 something, 30 something years of driving.
Right. All right, thanks a lot. That was Eric Lubow, and he is a person who honestly shares as a leader in this space, and I really, really want more people like him talking and more people listening to these people. So whether you are a CTO on your 5th team or you are about to lead one, I hope you walk away with a little less a feeling that you're supposed to have this all figured out. And a little more of the feeling that nobody really knows how to do it best and every situation is unique. Find Eric on LinkedIn, through his blog, if you're into Jiu-Jitsu or into people, through his podcast as well. And yeah, I'm Nunem. Let's keep root causing this. All right.
Thank you very much.
That was it. Thanks a lot.